Hello, everyone. Good to see all of you again after a long gap. We are back with yet another episode on anthropology. And specifically speaking, we will discuss biological anthropology in some detail. But keep in mind, our anthropology optional is not just about biology per se, but it is about biological anthropology, where we emphasize more on the applications of these biological aspects to humans, to humanity, right? That's what anthropology is. It's a discipline of infinite curiosity about humans. So that's an important sort of a distinction to keep in mind. So a biology answer isn't necessarily a biological anthropology answer. And one more thing, most of the students probably think that biology portion is going to be taxing, it's going to be slightly challenging, but trust me, that is not the case at all. Biology is in fact quite easy, and in fact a lot of fun as well. And you yourself will realize this thing after watching these videos on the playlist. So in this playlist, we will start from the very basics and try to sort of help you build some interest, and more importantly, help you build a strong foundation when it comes to biological anthropology. So without any further delay, let's get started. Okay, post-Darwinism or synthetic theory, okay, whatever you want to call it. Different names don't matter. So again, think of it like this: creationism to pre-Darwinism to Darwinism. And during Darwin, we also had Mendel. Parallelly, they were working, but they were working blind, as in they did not know of each other's work. In fact, his work in the 1860s, not much credence was given to it during that time, but it became popular since 1900s. Okay, but he was a hero, right? And plus, after this period, you have a lot of other advancements in bio, genetics, in general. With all of these things, now we can proceed to post-Darwin. Is this clear? Do you understand the bigger picture? Where have we come from? It is not that we've taken any, tangential or, we've just not wavered from our path. We had to cover these things to reach here. Got it?
Yes, sir.
So, what is synthetic theory, post-Darwin theory, all of these things, okay? What is the major idea here? It could be, why did we have to proceed after Darwin? What was the biggest issue with Darwin?
He couldn't explain why there were variations among the offspring.
Perfect. So now we have, this guy, Darwin, couldn't explain the source of variations. Meaning now if we have post-Darwin, so we should have this thing taken care of. Okay, now do we have, let's say, a sophisticated understanding of the basis of variations? And also, so that is through this part, right? What did we get through Mendel? So armed with these two, understanding the source of variations and the mechanism of inheritance, now we can proceed to synthetic theory. Is that okay?
Yes.
So can we just go back to the previous slide once? Yes.
So if I have to explain the mechanism of evolution here, now this has got to be a lot more sophisticated, and it has to use a lot of the things that we have studied in the last 1.5 days, right? So how do I explain this? See, there are two types of processes. First one, those that introduce new variations. And the other that affect the frequency of variations. Meaning, if there is a particular variation, will this change the frequency of that variation? As in, let's say I'm talking about the thin, narrow beak in a particular environment that has more flowers, right? So you have more of nectar. So if that particular variation comes into play in this environment, the frequency of that particular variation should go up, correct? And if there is something that is too broad, that is not fit for, getting out the nectar from those flowers, what will happen to that? That one's frequency comes down. Essentially, changing of frequency is your population evolving. Is that clear so far?
Yes, sir.
So in terms, sorry, Revati, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying yes, following.
Sources of variation wise, if you take a look at it, now see, first one could be mutation. What do you know about mutation? Do you know anything about mutation? What is a mutation?
Genetical change.
Cool. That is fine. Okay. So it is a change in my DNA sequence. So far, so good.
Yes, sir.
Now, if there is a sequence change, it may be passed on to the next generation. It may not be passed on to the next generation. It really depends on whether this is happening in, there are something called germ line cells. There are body cells, right? There is somatic, right? So it really depends on which one it is going to be affecting. If it is going to be something in your sperm or in the females in their eggs, then obviously it is going to be responsible for changes in the next generation. Otherwise, it is not going to be inherited. Okay, it is only what has happened in this generation, it dies in this generation. Is that clear?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
You only pass on what? Through your germ. Anything that happens in your egg and sperm is going to be passed on to the offspring. Anything that is not happening in your egg and sperm is not going to be passed on to the offspring. Is that clear?
Yes.
I'm going to make a mutation. Okay, let's say this is my DNA sequence. Okay, I have A, T, C, G, A, T, C, G, T, A, G, C. Okay, so now first one I'm going to talk about is deletion. Okay, so what could be my deletion? A, T, C, G, T, C, G, T, A, G, C. Essentially what has happened here is I am saying what happened here?
A is missing as in deleted.
So there is something missing. Now this particular kind of mutation is this is your deletion. Maybe this change in DNA sequence has resulted in some other kind of phenotype. Maybe this is the beak. Maybe this is thin and narrow, right? This is possibly one way of producing a variation. Now, again, you can go into many such things. What is insertion? So what has happened here?
Adding of.
Yep. So we have introduced something new here. Okay, this is my DNA sequence. Now let's say, there are many such things. Substitution. What is substitution? How about you guys draw one substitution? Let's see if it take this particular DNA sequence, write down the DNA sequence, and tell me what could be a substitution. Just go with the meaning of the word. So Niharika, what you've sent, can you tell me what is substitution in that? No, don't try to recall what substitution the word mean. In English, what does substitution mean?
Is substituted by something else, as in there was something and it's been substituted by something else.
Okay, now try to explain to me what you have sent.
There was an A and the T also should have been a T, I guess.
Does not matter. This is also fine. Basically, there is two substitutions here. Instead of A,
Yes, sir.
you've gotten a T. Instead of
Yeah.
T, you've gotten an A. So it's fine.
Yes,
so as long as you understand that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Revati, instead of C, you've put in an A. Okay, perfect. So you got the point, right? Do you want me to draw this? No, right?
No, sir, it's fine.
Okay, so something along these lines. So this is your first source, which is, what is this? Your mutation. It produces many such changes. Apart from this, you also have inversion. For instance, if you have a T and A, it becomes A and a T. So sequence change, it got inverted. Similarly, you can have a translocation. So for instance, you have one particular sequence on one end and another sequence on another end. Okay, those two get, so there is a change. So from one end, it goes to the other and the other one comes here. Something along these lines, okay? So essentially any kind of change in DNA sequence is your mutation. And every time there is a mutation, okay? So what essentially, so my final take is, what is my final take? Any kind of mutation is going to result in what? So are you still answering what our big scholar Darwin could explain?
Yes.
Okay. So now this mutation can happen due to a lot of reasons, but we are focusing on the fact that there is variation. We want to know about variation, okay? And if that mutation, okay, let's wait. Okay, so we've seen mutation. The other one that we talked about is genetic recombination. So this is the next way of creating variations. How does this work? Can you tell me? What is genetic recombination? If you know something, just blurt it out. If you don't know, that is fine. But it's okay, just try to tell me. I want to know whether you know or whether you know it wrong. Okay, all right. So genetic recombination. So generally what happens, this is my egg. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many are these? Can you tell me how many are those?
23.
Are you sure?
22, so the last one I think will be an X.
Revati? How many?
22.
And then
22.
you have a, so let's make this a Y. And let's make this an X. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So what will this offsprings thing be? Now do you understand what is happening? half from your father, half from your mother, put together, you're getting your genetic profile or your chromosomal uh, set of 46. Is this clear? So 22 plus 1, and this is 22 plus 1. Okay, both put together is going to be my 46. Is this clear?
Yes.
But how does this create how does this create variation? See, during this meiosis process, there is a lot of shuffling of genetic material. Okay, how exactly we will see, and this is during. Okay, and meiosis basically during formation of egg and sperm cells. So, for instance, let's say I have something like this, and I have a bunch of chromosomes. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let us say I have a Y here, and the rest of it is something along these lines. So let's say this is my paternal or my father, and let's say this is your maternal or mother. So what exactly should you have? You are basically seeing that these two, for instance, just an example, two such chromosomes are going to come together and make it. This is what we saw here. Am I talking about the same thing, just magnifying it a little further? Take a look.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
See, you have your father's side, you have your mother's side. Actually, I changed the color. Okay, just you got it right. So I've given blue as
Yes.
mother here. Just excuse that. But apart from that, essentially these chromosomes come here and these ones will come here and form something like this. So essentially something along these lines for the offspring, right? Now, if I just take this two example, I have this is a red, no? Okay. Let's say I have something like this. This is how the chromosome is going to look. Something like this. And the father's is going to be, oops. Hmm. Something like this, right? So technically you would think, okay, from this, what I'm going to have, okay, I'm supposed to have finally what, 4n, right? I'm supposed to have 4n. So I am supposed to technically have something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you would tell me, or this is what your initial thought would be, that I am going to get here one of this, right? This part and this part, okay? We are forming gamete, right? And this one and this one. This will be your idea of 4n. Okay, 4n. However, there is something, when these two come together, there is a little bit, they don't form like this. What they do is, there is a little bit of crossing over. And by that, I would say, try to draw this very simple. So do you see there is a small overlap here? Yes. If this is the case, I am going to have something like this. No. I'm basically just going to cut it somewhere here. Essentially, I'm saying that these have gotten fused. So but on this end, I'm going to have two little pieces of glue. Okay. And similarly, on the other end, can you draw the other? If you've understood it, you would draw it right. Draw it and get back to me. So this would produce what kind of 4n? So I'm going to take this part, that is going to be does this make sense? So this is my 4n because there is something of this step, and this particular step is called your genetic recombination. So here in this particular step, you see a lot of reshuffling of your what? Reshuffling of the genetic material. In fact, you might say that it is only this that I've drawn. Of course, all of these will again produce a lot of lots and lots of variation. So your parents can produce, anybody's, whatever it is, okay, millions of babies, and they'll all have different variations. So every single generation, there is a lots and lots of variations that are produced due to genetic recombination. And this is also a very powerful source of variation. Is this clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what are the two sources of variation? It is your mutation that keeps happening, and wherever you have mutation, right? And then you also have genetic recombination. This is another source of variation. Now, so these variations are raw materials. Think of natural selection. What did we say? Upon which natural selection can act. Okay. Upon which forces of evolution can act. Okay. Can act upon. So I have gotten you the variations. Now you play your game. You select whom you want for that particular environment. Is that clear? So now we have existing genetic variability within that particular species. So there could be evolutionary change if any of these variabilities are going to be better suited for that particular environment. If that in that particular environment, if a particular variation is well suited, that means that person will be able to eat more, that person will survive more, die less. And if that is the case, they will reach reproductive age, and then they'll reproduce, and they'll produce a lot of babies, whereas the others may not be producing the same number of babies. And then what will happen? You will have evolution, okay, in which you have more of those variations that are better suited to that environment. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I'm going to go Let's look at the forces of variation. First one, and the most important one, is what? What I just said. You have a whole bunch of variations. Now what you have to do, variation is already present. Okay, survival of the fittest will be there in that environment, and then evolution will select more of those for the next generation. Any questions about this? No, right?
Nothing from my end.
So then let's take a look at next one. There is also sexual selection. Not natural selection, but sexual selection. What does this mean? Would this be random mating or non-random mating? See, selection, what is sexual selection? It is the mate selection to produce your offspring. Is this random mating or non-random mating? Do they choose at random or do they not choose at random?
Random.
Okay, Harika?
I think non-random, sir.
Revati, when I'm saying the mate selection means how can it be random? You're selecting it, right? So if you're selecting for certain features, certain traits. So for instance, let's take a look at this. If I say, okay, like attracts like.
Mhm.
Okay, what will happen here? Similar traits. Can you see this running out of time window?
No, sir.
You can't see. Okay. Okay, similar traits. Okay, mating with. Okay, what will they produce? They'll produce more similar traits.
Yeah.
I can give you an example. Dark and dark. Okay, and this person is also dark and dark. If they prefer each other, what will be the offspring's kind of traits?
Dark again.
Okay, now similarly, what if I say opposites attract? See, both of these things are very like, this applies to humans also, right? Sometimes people with similar qualities, similar interests, similar hobbies, they like each other. There are others who have, they say, right, opposites attract. They have very little in common, but they just they are enamored by each other's opposite interests. You've heard of both of these, right? So what would it be? Opposite likes opposite. So what essentially will it be? So let's say if I'm just going with dark dark and light light, so what would this be? There'll be a lot more of these, right? Okay, so this is again going to be, what will this be? So in this non-random mating, these organisms, they may prefer to mate with others of the same genotype or of different genotypes. Both of these, we talked about like attracts like or opposites attract. Similarly, in this non-random mating, it won't make allele frequencies in the population change by itself. Okay, but it can alter the genotype frequencies. How will it alter the genotype frequencies? This way, you have altered the genotype frequencies for the next generation. Yes, let us say there is only these two in the population. Okay, so this is 50%, and let's say this population is only two individuals. So this is 50%, this is 50%. What happened to the next generation? Genotype frequencies have changed, right?
Yes, sir.
So can you say evolution has happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so before this, So I think you're getting confused because I'm not getting the quick fire yes and no's. See, this at the end of this one, I thought I'll talk about it. I'll just tell you. यहाँ पे evolution equals descent with modification. This is not the exact definition, but this is the functional definition. You understand what it is, right? You can make sense of it. If descent, okay, the descendants have modified from the previous generation's forms, then you can say there is evolution. Whereas here, by the time you come here, evolution is change in allelic frequencies from generation to generation. Is that clear? So we have changed it to descent with modification. That modification is now change in allelic frequencies because we know a lot more. We know alleles, right? I've introduced all those topics to you. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Now here, I had 2 in population. This is 1, and this is 1. Okay, so now what happened? This guy is 50% of my genotype or allelic frequency. This is 50% of my allelic frequency. Now in the next generation, what am I going to have? I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have this. Draw up Punnett square, and you'll see these are the options. So what has happened is this has become 50%, but this guy has 25%, new guys. Okay, new kind of traits. So 25%. So can I say there is change in allelic frequency? From generation to generation?
Yes, sir.
Revati, can I say this?
Yes.
So then I can say evolution has happened. So again, this is another guiding force of evolution. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Then we can talk about, there are many such things. Okay, there is migration. What is migration? Migration can be incoming new frequency of alleles, or it can be outgoing, right? So both of this thing brings gene flow. Okay, so new alleles may come into the population. Now this also can be a strong agent of evolution. But generally, the smaller the population, larger the population. Where will you see more of evolution? Due to migration. Where will be evolution more? Where will be more change in allelic frequency? Just try to think in terms of logic, purely across with logic. So you take a stand and just explain it to me why you took that stand. Are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Try to apply the logic now. Where will you have more change in allelic frequency? In a small population or in a larger population when there is migration? See, the way I teach it is that
Smaller
conceptually
population with
you
more.
have, so you have your crystal clarity on the concepts. Okay, now instead of like learning it as Q&A Okay, because you never know how it's going to be asked. Just apply the logic, you'll never forget it. And second thing is, even if you don't remember it in exam, you will be able to derive it. Okay, so what you know so far, you know incoming of genes. And I've given you another factor, there is small population or there is a larger population. Where will be more evolution, as in where will be more change in allelic frequencies? Now go ahead.
So in a smaller population with more migration, there's a more chance of evolution.
Harika, is this correct?
I'm not sure, sir. I don't know if the population will actually make a lot of difference. It depends on the variation that's already existing among them. So
So let us say I have a lot of this in my population. This is my small population. Okay, and then I have large population.
Okay.
I'm guessing this is around 10. This is around 3. Okay, migration of 2 guys to reproduce. Where will be more evolution? Okay, so initially this population had, what is the frequency here? A ka frequency is like 100%. But later next generation, A's frequency is 50%. Okay, capital A frequency in this population because of this migration is going to be 50%. So how much of evolution has happened? A large change in allelic frequency. However, if I have another population with dot, and 2 of these guys come in. Okay, so I have 5 into 5. Okay, so how many is this? A frequency used to be 100% here, and next generation, what will be the frequency in the next generation? It is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 into 5 is 25. So 50 A's. 50 A's. Okay, and 4 capital A's. So what is my frequency? Frequency in the next generation changes. So how much is this? 50 by 4, right? So a lot less. It is still, this is majority. Whereas here, it has become 50 by 50. It is 1:1 ratio. Here, it is a lot more, 12.5 to 1. So it has. So where do you see more evolution happening in the population? This population, small population, okay, big evolution. Why so? Because allelic frequency change is high, okay? Whereas here, large population, 2 individuals coming in is not going to make much of a difference. Less evolution. Is there change in allelic frequency? Of course, there is change in frequency because new ones came in. But in the larger scheme of things, it is slow. It is low. Is this clear?
Yes.
You got it, Harika. Did you get it?
yes, sir.
The next one we'll talk about is migration. Sorry, migration is already done. We look at genetic drift. Have you heard of genetic drift? This may be, I mean, it is very difficult to make out from the name. Okay. So generally, in smaller population, okay, I'll forget that. It's also called chance factor. Okay, or it is random. Okay, or sometimes just error. So basically what I'm trying to say is that you could have change in your allelic frequency, which is totally independent of natural selection. So you have okay, by chance, okay, or random, okay, basically totally independent of what? Meaning the change in allelic frequency has, over a period of generations is not because they have been selected by nature. It has not been selected by nature. Do you get it? So meaning if the next generation, my kind of beaks have changed, but that is not because of that environment. It is not because that kind of beak is giving me a particular advantage. Maybe they just hit a plane on their way to migrate, on the way of migrating to that island, and they died. But that does not mean that so the frequency changes, right? All of them become broad beaks. This is not because of natural selection. So anything that is outside of natural selection is your genetic drift. Now, will this impact be higher in smaller populations, or will it be in larger populations?
Higher in smaller population.
Okay. And Harika?
Yes, the same. I think in smaller population.
Why do you think? Are you not sure? Think and tell me. See, you have 1 teaspoon of water. You put in a drop of ink, the color changes. Now you have a bucket of water. You put 1 drop of ink. Will the color change? Which one will have a higher impact of the new changes? The teaspoon of water or the bucket of water?
Teaspoon of water, sir.
So it's like that mixtures and allegations, right? The smaller your solution, okay, the incoming new what do you call that? Whatever the new thing that you're adding to it is now going to, the smaller it is, whatever you add into it is going to get magnified. Okay, it is going to change it quite a bit. But if your entire solution or that part of your population is very large, then any small changes is now going to impact so much. So there will be a frequent change in frequency of alleles, but that will be quite minimal. Okay, unless the changes due to genetic drift is like very, very, very large. Is that clear? So for instance, I'll give you an example. Okay, so this could be because, so let's say there are, like for example, think of it like this, and I don't want to put genotype here, I'll put it as phenotype. So these are my 2 beaks. Okay, and then I have my broad beaks. So this is my ratio, right? But let's say something happens, okay? Something happens, let's say there is a predator, a bigger bird, and the bigger bird, okay, kills this and kills this. So in my next generation, what do I have? I have these broad beaks. So what has exactly happened? No, maybe this is not the best example. Let us say, because there is a reason why, okay, let me just remove this. Let's go back to, let's take a look at people. Let's say there are different kinds of people. I have these kind of people. I also have whatever variation is, it doesn't really matter. Okay, take any kind of trait that you want or any kind of genotype that you want, something like this. Okay, now for some reason, they're working in a factory or something like that, and there are only 5 people in this particular population. Let's say this thing catches fire. Okay, these 3 get out. Before these 2 can get out, okay, the entire thing just collapses and they die. So the next generation, what happens is that I have these guys surviving and these guys reproducing, right? So now this is not because those red ones or whatever those traits those guys have, it is not because they were not better suited to that environment. It is because of a random event. It is because of clearly by chance. It could have been these 2 guys coming last. That didn't really matter. Somehow they got eliminated from the population. And this has changed my frequency of my alleles in the population. This is not because of natural selection. It is just because of a random event. Does this help you in understanding genetic drift?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so error or sampling error or random or chance factors. Now again, there is speciation. Do you know what is speciation? What is a species? Tell me, what is a species? Have you not discussed in class?
Organisms of the same type.
Yeah, okay. So they are of the same type. That is true. And but see, there are some technicalities. People of the same species should be able to interbreed. Okay.
Yes.
So if there are 2 kind of organisms, if they can interbreed, then they are part of the same species. So if they're mating, they're having sex, right? Now that is not enough. They should not only be able to mate, they should also be able to reproduce and produce an offspring. Is that clear?
Yes. Yep.
Now, not only that, not only do they reproduce and produce an offspring, but that offspring should be viable, meaning it should also be fertile,
Yeah.
and that should be able to reproduce.
Produce. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys tell me, lion and tiger, same species or different species?
Different species.
Different, sir.
Have you heard of liger or liger or tigon?
Yes.
Yes,
What
sir.
are these then?
They are the offsprings, but then they cannot reproduce.
Exactly. Have I already covered this, or you just saying from your knowledge?
You have
You
already covered it.
Okay, so this is okay. So then I don't have to go into all of these things now. So not fertile. Okay, so because of this thing, okay. So I'm not going to go into it. So you know what is a species. So you know. I'm just writing this, you know. Okay, basically, actually reproducing. Or capable of reproducing. Okay, and produce an offspring, and it should be fertile as well, meaning they should be able to reproduce. So you got this, right? So species is basically a taxonomic classificatory category. Okay, and in speciation, we are saying it is an evolutionary process of formation of multiple species or 2 or more species from one is called speciation. So I can say something like, oh, we've covered this in the other topic, right? Got it.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's say finch 1 from South America, and then you have F1, F2, different types of finches in different environments. So this is again what? Formation of different species, or saying that there are speciation happening. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that, see, there are many. So we have change in allelic frequencies, right? Small change in allelic frequency we keep seeing, right? They get accumulated. Okay, and this is basically microevolution. This accumulated microevolution will result in macroevolution. Meaning, so this small change in allelic frequencies, okay, generation after generation after generation, finally will have macroevolution impact, or we can see it in our naked eye, or we can test them by making them reproduce and all this kind of thing, basically that they form different species. So this is another force of evolution. Small changes within a population, okay, basically the variation is there, okay, and there is small accumulated microevolution or change in allelic frequencies, and this in the population is going to lead to macroevolution, as in speciation after a certain period of time. Is this clear?
Yes. Sir.
So net, what have we said so far? We have said there are sources of variation, and we have discussed a couple of things in it, and then we've also talked about guiding forces of inheritance or evolution or whatever it is. Through these mechanisms, we can explain, or we can build on the theory and the logic, okay, and the concepts provided by, okay, Charles Darwin in the 1850s, by implementing or by incorporating all the other advances in biology, in genetics, and many other fields, along with also the rules of inheritance and a knowledge of inheritance through Mendel. So all of these things put together, now we can explain evolution in a much better manner. And this is called your synthetic theory. So we started with, to explain evolution, we went to creationism, then we went to pre-Darwin, which is Lamarck and the giraffe example. Then we went into Darwin, in which we talked about natural selection and the finches, right? And then after that, we had Gregor Mendel and his 3 laws of inheritance. And then we looked at many more advancements, and I introduced a lot of new keywords and concepts: cells, nucleus, chromosomes, DNA, genes, allele, genotype, phenotype, heterozygous, homozygous, somatic cells, germ cells, right? So many things. After all of these things, we're incorporating them, and then we're coming out with a final post-Darwin theory or synthetic theory or neo-Darwinism to explain, what did we explain? To explain evolution. Is this clear? Hope you guys are finding a biological anthropology playlist useful for your preparation. Hope this video helped reinforce your basics and also helped you connect a little better with the applications. If there's any other aspect of anthropology that you would like to know more about, do let us know in the comment section, and we will try to make videos on those as well. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.